Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Driver's Seat Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. We're just going to do a short two-segment episode this week. I've been feeling under the weather for the past few days, and there really wasn't much news to talk about anyway. But I do want to talk about the 2024 schedule, which, at the time of production, has just been released. Now, I'm going to give you a summation of the scheduled changes. There may be more. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Now, both the 2024 races at Richmond will take place in prime time, March 31st and August 11th, respectively. As I said before, the dirt race at Bristol is officially dead, thank God. And a return to the concrete high banks at Bristol is in store for the spring race, which is always a good move. Another good move is that the NASCAR's annual All-Star race will return to North Wilkesboro for 2024. Now, round 2 in the streets of Chicago will take place on Sunday, July 7th, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Again, another good move is NASCAR will return to the traditional oval at Indianapolis for the Brickyard 400, Sunday, July 21st. Now, after the Brickyard 400, NBC will be covering the 2024 Summer Olympics. I've given my thoughts on Olympic television and Olympic commentating, but as a direct result of the Olympics, the Cup Series will be on hiatus for 2 weeks until the Cookout Southern 500. 1 week later than normal, let me rephrase that. The NASCAR Series playoffs will begin 1 week later in 2024. This regular season finale will take place at Darlington on September 1st. The opening race of the playoffs will be at Atlanta on Sunday, September 8th. And the season finale will take place at Phoenix on November 10th. And Watkins Glen will be joining the NASCAR playoffs on September 15th. Now, Auto Club, for the first time since I think 97, is not on the schedule this year because due to corporate greed and land being bought, it's being converted into a short track and will not be on the series schedule for 2024, and as a direct result, Iowa Speedway will then host a Cup Series race. Now, as I mentioned, the Chicago Street Race is scheduled, but we have to discuss the Chicago Street Race situation. Because while it has been announced, it may not be final. See, Mayor Brandon Johnson could easily shoot down this race, and given how the citizens of Chicago are feeling, it's very possible. Frankly, this race was handled very badly. I don't think anybody in Chicago is going to disagree with me on that. Even NASCAR fans outside of Chicago won't disagree with me on that. Now, while it would be easy to cite that as reason to cancel the race, there's another story that could heavily factor into the situation. So NASCAR put out a press release, and in that press release, they discussed the financial impacts of the Chicago Street Race. Now, I'm going to give you the meat of the matter here because I had to edit out a lot of mindless buttering up. So I had to do that to get to the meat of the matter. Quote, in addition to the 2024 return announcement, Choose Chicago and the Chicago Sports Commission released the findings of their independent economic impact report, which showed the inaugural Chicago Street Race exceeded initial economic forecasts despite historic rains, delivering a total economic impact of $108.9 million for Chicago from corporate spending and non-local attendees, who said that the Chicago Street Race was their sole or primary reason for travel. This is in addition to another $6.2 million in economic investment from attendees, who said that the event was equally important as other attractions in their decision to travel to Chicago. The press release continues, the 2023 street race weekend helped drive the highest hotel revenue for 4th of July weekend, which traditionally lags behind other summer weekends. Since 2015, it brought in more than $8.3 million in state and local taxes while supporting 750 jobs. According to the Economic Impact Report, 52% of 2023 racegoers traveled to the race from outside the city, spending money in local restaurants, shops, and hotels as a result. 77% of these visitors, who hailed from all 50 states and 15 countries, said that they would recommend Chicago as a travel destination going forward, and 64% of last year's visitors said that they plan on returning to Chicago for another vacation in the future. First off, it should be this year's, because there wasn't a race last year. But I digress. Now we get to the critical part of my argument, going back to the press release. Quote, wait a minute, in addition to the overall economic impact of the weekend-long national television broadcast, delivered another $23.6 million in total media value to Chicago, the equivalent of 3 30-second Super Bowl ads for the city. The 2023's NASCAR Chicago Street Races Grand Park 2020 was the most watched NBC race broadcast since 2017 and the most streamed race in NASCAR sports history, 163,500 viewers. Now, this is the critical argument for why people would want the race to continue. Because the TV numbers in question were a 2.52 rating with 4,632,000 total viewers. To put that in perspective, that's slightly less than the Indy 500, which had a 2.65 rating and 4,710,000 total viewers. 4,710,000 viewers. I'm sorry, I'm really out of it right now. It's not COVID, but I'm still not feeling great. And this was, at the time of writing, one of only two NBC NASCAR races, one of two NBC races that got more than 3 million viewers. With viewership being what it is on NBC, because the numbers aren't great, NASCAR really wants this race, and NBC really wants this race. At the end of the day, the ultimate question is, how will Chicago address this? I mean, the amount of money that was generated doesn't really lie. And even for a city like Chicago, $108 million is not something to sneeze at. A $6.2 million in economic investment was nothing to sneeze at. It's just, if the citizens aren't happy and an election cycle is coming up, even those numbers might not be enough to keep the race in place. And again, you have to factor in that a lot of people in the city government, the alder people, aldermen, alderwomen, they weren't happy with the way that this was handled, and I can't say that I blame them, because Lori Lightfoot, who brokered this deal as mayor, literally did not inform the city council that this deal had gone through. How is that even legal? How is that legal? Someone explain this to me. And I live in Chicago. I have a lot of Facebook friends and social media friends and people I know who work downtown. I used to work downtown too. Who were pissed at everything that was going on in terms of Grant Park and that particular area going on at once. They were pissed. And justifiably so. And I said this before. NASCAR's a national sport, but it's also a lot more regional than I think you'd realize. And in all sincerity, I still say that this should have been done in a smaller, more NASCAR-centric market than Chicago. Because the way that this was handled by Chicago was not good. Even like I said before, all the money in the world is great, but if your citizens aren't going to re-elect you because they're so mad at how you handled this, well, sucks to be you, little dockers. So I'll be interested to see where this goes and how this is handled. But I think NASCAR is going to be making some contingency plans. If they aren't, they should be. And I'll be interested to see where this goes. I just don't see it happening. Then again, I've been wrong on other things, so we'll see. So I have to speak on this for the final part of this segment. I watch the truck series. I love watching NASCAR. I love the truck series. Talladega is my favorite track. I've said that on a number of occasions. Jamie Little. I've defended her to the best of my ability. I feel that she normally does a decent enough job in the booth for FS1, even when there are other more viable options available. With that said, I can't defend her after the Talladega truck race. Her commentating in the booth was atrocious. Wasn't so much her doing maybe having an off day. This was just a case of just not it. She was bad from start to finish. Now, in a 2 to 3 hour live broadcast, I'll give you a few mistakes here and there. I'll give you a few gaffes. I'll give you a few chuckles, whatever. Her entire commentary from green to checker was damn near unlistenable, to the point that when I was watching it on the DVR, I had to have it on mute. I couldn't put up with her yammering about how fun it is. And I tried listening to it towards the end of the race. Her call on the last lap was one of, if not the worst last lap calls I've ever heard. And I've been a fan of NASCAR since 1990. Okay, 33 years. That was the worst last lap call I have ever heard. And I'm not taking anything away from her in terms of her career, because nobody's going to argue with me that she is one of, if not the best pit reporters in the game. Nobody's arguing with me on that. She's a great pit reporter, one of the best. That's why a lot of people supported her decision in the first place. Put her in the booth. Okay, she's good. She knows what she's doing. She's a natural talker. Just get her out of the booth. I am done defending Jamie Little as a booth announcer. Not that Michael Waltrip or Phil Parsons were any better on that broadcast. Just the entire team was awful. Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, Jamie. You're a great pit reporter, one of the best. You're just not ready for the booth. I'm sorry. And again, I judge all booth announcers and pit announcers by the same yardstick. You're all being held to the same set of standards. When you can't live up to the same set of standards that everyone else can pass, that's on you, not me. Everybody's being treated the same. Everyone's held to the same standards. Sorry, just not good enough. Now with that, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to discuss a Dale Earnhardt Sr. rabbit hole I went down last week. So I'll be right back. Welcome back. As many of you know, I'm a devotee of Unit Watch. They are a great resource for sports uniform news and sports uniform history. On October 6th, in their news feed, they had a picture of Dale Earnhardt Sr. with a taped-up side number that was submitted with the following description. In the 1998 Myrtle Beach 200, a Busch Series race, Dale Earnhardt's crew had to hastily change his iconic number 3 to an 8 with duct tape, as there already was a number 3 registered for the race. I wouldn't want to have been the driver who was registered with number 3. They didn't call Dale Earnhardt the Intimidator for nothing, end quote. So I'm like, okay, this piqued my interest. I did a little research, and it unexpectedly took me down a rabbit hole. Now, all of the information used comes from racerreference.info, links in the description. And I looked through there, and I discovered that in the 1998 Busch Series, Dale Earnhardt raced a total of 14 races that year all in the number 8 Chevy. I was confused at first, but then I realized that while Dale Earnhardt raced for Richard Childress Racing in the Winston Cup, driving the number 3, he raced in the number 8 Chevy for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. So it wasn't exactly the same team. It was two completely different teams. So I started looking into, well, who had the number 3 at that point? And during the 1980 season, two different drivers raced the number 3. First, we have Mike Porter, who did well in the regional series, had a somewhat decent career in the Xfinity series, but he didn't make much of a lasting impact in 1998. He drove the 1988 Goody Dash 300 at Daytona in the Fred and Jack Salvage number 3 Oldsmobile. Later in the year, he drove the Fred and Jack Salvage number 3 Chevy at the Granger Select 200 at Louisville and the Myrtle Beach 200 at Myrtle Beach, obviously. And his final race in 1988 was the Advance Auto Parts 150 at Martinsville, racing the Ryder Floors number 3 Chevy. Now, Mike Porter was not the only driver to race in the number 3 in the Busch Series in 1988. Dave Lind raced the number 3 Lind Racing Buick at the 1988 Budweiser 200 at Dover. I should also note that in my research I found out that Earnhardt was not the only driver to race in the number 8 in the 1998 Busch Series that year. Kenny Wallace drove the number 8 GM Goodwrench Dale Earnhardt Inc. Chevrolet in the Advance Auto 150 at Martinsville. I don't know why Dale Sr. wasn't there, and I wasn't able to find any reason why. But at the 1988 Oxford 250, Billy Clark, I'm going to butcher this. He drove the Quint Boisvert, Boisvert, number 8 Skoal Pontiac. Okay, so now we get to the $64,000 question, namely, if Dale Earnhardt raced in the number 8 in every race in the Busch Series in 1988, why did he have to modify his car number for the Myrtle Beach 200 from 3 to 8? Well, a look at the number 3, a look at both the Cup Series and Busch Series schedules from 1988 reveals something very, very interesting. The Myrtle Beach 200 was held on July 2nd, the same day as the 1988 Pepsi Firecracker 400 at Daytona, and as confirmed by Racing Reference and a few other sources, Earnhardt raced in both races. He had a solid showing at Daytona, but at Myrtle Beach he only lasted 49 laps before crashing. So, it should be noted also that the start time of the Myrtle Beach was significantly after the Firecracker 400, and Earnhardt flew to the race from Daytona because a little research tells me that driving would take about 6 to 7 hours. So, the most logical explanation for the number change is that this was a last-minute decision by Earnhardt to race at Myrtle Beach. For whatever reason, Dale Earnhardt Inc. wasn't able to get the car ready in time for the race. So he goes to Richard Childress and says, hey, can I have one of your number 3 cars to race at Myrtle Beach? He said yes, since it would more or less fit the rulebook, albeit with a few minor modifications, and no significant sponsor changes would be needed. I'm willing to bet that in thinking about this, neither Earnhardt nor Childress factored in that Mike Porter would have already brought his number 3 Chevy to the race. So utilizing duct tape and ingenuity, they reverted the car back to an 8, and although it doesn't look bad, it's still an odd look though. And, well, with that, this week's episode comes to an end. That was a fun rabbit hole to go down. I'll figure out something for next week. I'm Dave Frosley. If you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you then.